Hi, I'm Rick Reef. Welcome to SoCal Insider. A historic trial over public education in California is in its third month in a Los Angeles courtroom. A group of underprivileged kids, backed by a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, LA School Superintendent John Daisy, and other reformers, is taking on the state of California and its teacher unions. What does it mean for teachers, parents, and students? We'll debate. But first, fallout from a recent court ruling that chipped away at California's strict gun control laws. David Nazar, what's the story?
Rick, the Los Angeles and Orange County chapters of the Brady campaign, that's the national organization to prevent gun violence, are taking aim at Orange County Sheriff Sandra Hutchens over her new policy for handling concealed weapons permits. Last week, the Brady campaign fired off this letter to Orange County Sheriff Sandra Hutchens asking that the department stop issuing concealed weapons permits. The advocacy organization told the sheriff that issuing the permits is contrary to the law. This all stems from the recent Orange County Board of Supervisors meeting, where Sheriff Hutchens explained to the board that she was going to use about $1.5 million in her budget to help process a backlog of concealed weapons permit applications. While the decision is up to Hutchens, the board gave the sheriff its approval. The money should help speed up applications that Hutchens says have rapidly hit the OC Sheriff's Department since February. Now, this somewhat complicated story is in large part about the Second Amendment, gun rights advocates, and anti-gun activists. Simply put, do some people have what's known as a good cause to walk around with a weapon hidden in, say, their jacket? In other words, are some folks more at risk than others, like people who carry large sums of money, or have a threat against their life, or maybe a job that puts them in danger? That argument set the stage for a lawsuit known as Peruta versus San Diego County. It's a Second Amendment case challenging the concealed carry license issuing policies in that county. Ed Peruta filed the suit after his application for a concealed weapons permit was denied. He said he wanted to carry a gun to defend himself and his family.
In Peruta, what the plaintiffs were saying is that this was unconstitutional to require good cause, that personal safety or personal protection should be reason enough, and that it was a violation of the Second Amendment to require good cause.
The case was lost in U.S. District Court and then heard on appeal.
The Ninth Circuit, they heard the case. 3 members of the panel heard the case, and in a 2-to-1 decision said that yes, the good cause was unconstitutional, that personal safety, personal protection was enough, and that requiring this good cause was in violation of the Second Amendment.
Today, the Orange County Sheriff's Department is bombarded with concealed weapons permit applications. There are currently 1,200 application requests, and there are about 900 folks in OC who already have their permits.
The Ninth Circuit panel that heard the case issued a stay of the mandate to the lower district court, meaning it is not going to direct the district court to do anything yet. However, the opinion is not yet withdrawn because the court has not yet decided to grant a rehearing. So that's, why I am continuing to follow the decision made by the Ninth Circuit.
As you know, many of your critics are arguing that you're simply rushing these permits through, given the status of the Peruta case.
Right. Well, I'm not rushing through. Just as I took criticism for requiring, good cause in some cases, I said then that I was following the law. If the law changed, I would then follow that law. Well, currently the law has changed, and so I am following what the current law says.
No, you're not, says Suzanne Verge. Verge is president of the Los Angeles chapter of the Brady campaign to end gun violence. Verge says the Brady campaign is shocked at how Sheriff Hutchens is allocating $1.5 million to rush through applications.
When we first heard this news, we didn't really understand it because good cause is still the law of the land. Attorney General Kamala Harris, the Brady campaign, has intervened, and there is currently a stay on this ruling. So, to me, I don't understand why she's doing it because good cause is still the law of the land.
As you folks analyze this, why do you believe the sheriff is doing this?
I'm not sure why the sheriff is doing this, especially she's the only sheriff in the state of California, the only county that is aggressively issuing concealed carry weapons permits.
Verge says Orange County should be more like Los Angeles, where far fewer concealed weapons permits are handed out each year, only about a few hundred in LA.
We have one county in the entire state interpreting the law very differently and giving out these permits, and in a very liberal way. 700 permits in a period of 3 weeks. I don't think this is going to be good for Orange County.
Interestingly, your predecessor, Sheriff Mike Corona, the argument against him was that it was sort of a quid pro quo. He was handing out these concealed weapons permits to all his friends and to all his buddies as payback.
I'm not. I'm just issuing applications or going to issue permits in line with the law. So, you know, when I came in, I was asked by an LA Times reporter when I first was appointed sheriff, what are you going to do about those permits that Sheriff Corona issued? And I said, I'm going to take a look at them to make sure they meet the good cause requirement. Some of them did, and some of them didn't.
Now, Orange County isn't entirely alone in the way it's reacting. Ventura County has also dropped the good cause standard in reviewing CCW applications. And Rick, it is worth noting that both of these counties have really been overwhelmed with applications since that court ruling.
David, let me go out on a limb here and make a bold prediction. I think that ultimately Sheriff Hutchens is going to prevail, but it could be a really bumpy ride. I think there's a good chance the Ninth Circuit's going to overturn its own panel. Remember, these two judges who sided with the gun rights advocates are two of the most conservative on what is a pretty liberal-leaning Ninth Circuit. And you know, if they do overturn it, then the National Rifle Association is going to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has been pretty strong for the Second Amendment. So I think things, you know, could be in flux for a while, but that's just my prediction.
Yeah, and again, really, look, I have to underscore how livid these gun opponents are with what the sheriff has done. I mean, they say it's especially galling to them because, as they put it, she took such a tough stance on permits after the freewheeling policy of her disgraced predecessor, Sheriff Corona.
Yeah, in some ways you might call this the revenge of Mike Corona, if you will, because people are, you know, going to be getting signed up for the permits. Now, I don't think politically it cuts much for her either way. I don't think she lost a lot of capital when she was really tough on the things, and I don't think on the registrations, I don't think it's going to really cut too much either way politically. But it'll be an interesting case to follow through the courts. All right, and now, California's public education system on trial. The case is called Vergara versus California. It began in an LA courtroom in late January, and now it's winding up in the next week or two. What will it mean for the way we educate our kids? Well, joining me, former State Senate Majority Leader Gloria Romero, now director of the Foundation for Parent Empowerment, and representing the California Teachers Association, Reagan Duncan. Duncan is also an elementary school teacher in the Vista Unified School District in San Diego County. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Gloria, who is Vergara and what is this case about?
Vergara is basically about kids in California. These happen to be 9 very brave kids who have aroused the interest of education reformers throughout California who have rallied to their support to actually defend the Constitution. And they are bravely doing this by challenging 5 key statutes embedded in law which put together essentially deprive especially poor and minority children of a fair shot at a quality education. It's a civil rights case. This is probably the most important education case in the modern era, and everybody's watching at it. It's really captured the imagination and attention of people across the nation.
Reagan, it's captured the attention of teacher unions. Do you have the same assessment of what this case is about?
I would have to say no, of course not. I do agree that it has opened up a lot of things to look at, and it has opened up some doors for us, which could be good. Now, I see this as an attack on public education, and more than that, I see it as a privatization attack and wanting to privatize education and have private corporations, a private corporation special interest in how we educate our children more than these brave students standing up and saying that what's happening isn't okay, and as well as looking at those students, those 9 students who've come forward. These students were sought out, and the person behind the Vergara case, David Welsh, is a billionaire who has a very special and vested interest in privatizing education, and also a very special interest in charter schools.
Yeah. What's his interest? I know he's interested in charter schools, but what's his profit motive, or does he have a profit motive in this?
Well, by privatizing education, it's a lucrative business. Charter schools can be a lucrative business, and when we're looking at charter schools, and the laws governing charter schools are different, in fact, than are those for public education schools as well. So when you're looking at that, and when we're looking at the pieces that fit into this puzzle, when we're looking at what it's talking about, dealing with teacher layoffs and dealing with that in particular, it doesn't actually even affect those schools. So the laws don't actually apply to those schools. So in fact, the 4 of the children who are, and the children that are in this, the laws don't actually apply to those schools in particular, because they are charter schools. So the bringing up these 9 kids and these students who are coming out here are actually defending something that doesn't apply to them.
Okay, Gloria, so is this a privatization play and a really a big business trying to subvert public education?
Not at all. I don't know what trial you're referring to, but Vergara is about 5 key laws in California that affect public education. It's about teachers, and I'm actually surprised and really disappointed that the California Teachers Association, which is the most powerful money force in the state of California, is fighting this tooth and nail. What it says is teachers matter, great teachers matter, but probably even more importantly, ineffective teachers matter. And what this case brings out, and the trial thus far has been just amazing in the testimony, showing that essentially these laws, which deal with seniority, tenure after only 2 years, and California is only one of 6 states in the nation that gives teachers permanent employment status after 2 years on the job. You know, even at the University of California, the California State University system, there is tenure. It takes 7 years in the universities to get tenure. Also, this challenges the way in which teachers are dismissed for ineffective performance. It's very arduous. It's a very intensive process. We estimate that it takes maybe 5 years on average to fire a teacher who has committed a sexual assault against a student or is just incapable in the classroom. It can cost hundreds of thousands, even up to $1 million. Basically, the system's broken. And you know, the worst thing about this is that some of these statutes, they're not based on sound education policy. Some of these statutes, like the tenure after 2 years, that was a backroom deal. That was a political negotiation that was maneuvered by the California Teachers Associations and legislators back in the 1980s. There's no sound education policy. So, no, Reagan, this isn't about privatization. This is about quality public education and knowing I'm a teacher, you're a teacher, that we matter in a classroom.
Reagan, that sounds like a pretty impassioned statement there about what matters. How do you feel? Is it too difficult to get rid of a bad teacher in California?
Well, what I'd say first of all is any teacher would be the first to tell you that we want high quality teachers in our classrooms, and you'd agree with me. I hope every teacher and every parent would agree with me that we want highly qualified and quality teachers in our classroom. Everyone does. Now, we're talking about 2 different things that you brought up. I just want to bring up the difference between, we're talking about dismissals and layoffs.
Well, let's talk about dismissal. Should it take 5 years to fire a bad teacher?
So the dismissals that are available right now, the current dismissal process, the laws that are there now, do work well in well-run school districts. And what we're looking at when we're looking at dismissal is you do have to go through a process, and what it allows for is due process. You do have to go through a process with the teachers, and it is important that you help a teacher first. If there's a teacher who's struggling within their 1st or 2nd year of teaching, and I believe that 2 years is enough time for an administrator, an effective administrator, an administrator who's well trained, to be able to decide within those first 2 years if this teacher has what it takes. Teachers can be let go for any reason or no reason within their first 2 years. So I believe that is having a longer period of time for probation would be just moot in this case. However, there is a dismissal process. Teacher has to receive a negative evaluation first and then be offered assistance.
So
you
you're
want to
saying,
support the teachers first.
Do the numbers support that teachers can be replaced? Because I've seen some numbers. It's very hard. I mean, you know, John Daisy, the superintendent in L.A., said it costs $250,000 in several years to fire. Do you just dispute those numbers, or is L.A. not well run?
No, I don't. I definitely don't. I don't dispute numbers that are out there. What I would say is that they're misleading, because John Daisy also stated that cost is never an issue when it comes to dismissing teachers. And in fact, in his watch, the number of dismissed teachers has increased tenfold. So saying that it costs, and then going and saying directly that cost is not a decision, is not coming into the equation when we're dismissing, those are two contradictory statements. So I would again say that in a well-run school district, that yes, current dismissal laws do work if the procedures are followed. If they're not followed, I would say that that's the fault of a negligent administrator.
Gloria, what about the argument that going after teachers is not the way to improve education?
The lawsuit is about the Constitution of the state of California. This is what the case is about. This is about a constitution that says every kid in California, and we've got some 6.2 million school children in California who are governed by that constitution. The Constitution is about granting equal rights to kids who go into that public school system. The current system, it may work well for the California Teachers Association, but it doesn't work well for kids. That's the essence of this. In fact, it's interesting on the question of 2 years, who else gets permanent job status in California after, it's not even 2 years because you can't give notice during the summer months for some reason, it's 18 months. And then basically a job essentially for life. In fact, even the San Jose Teachers Association, which are members of the California Teachers Association, kudos for them for having the courage to work with their administration to step forward, and they have begun to acknowledge that, you know what, maybe we need longer. They're actually suggesting 3 years. Remember, in California, we're only one of 6 states in the nation that basically gives it after 18 months, basically because of a backroom political deal back in the 1980s that's lingered. And until these brave kids, and kids don't pay union dues, so they don't have lobbyists, I am really glad that the philanthropic community has stepped forward to assist these kids in this civil rights struggle. They're stepping up to say, we will pro bono support these minority children, basically standing up to say separate is not equal, and we want a good teacher like Reagan, like me, like so many other good teachers in all of our classrooms. It shouldn't be predicated by your zip code or your level of wealth. It basically should be a good teacher is a good teacher. We have to be able to evaluate them, but you need time to do the proper evaluation.
I'm hearing Gloria say that this is a system that's failing. And as people look at some of these test scores in many public schools, it looks that way. How do you feel? Is the public education system in California failing?
I would go back and say, first of all, that there are so many factors that determine how a child does in school, and there are so many factors determining what's going on in our education system right now, that it doesn't all go down to the teacher. And this blame the teacher first has been done so many times, and frankly is offensive as a teacher. Blame the teacher first. That's where the problem is. Look at all the things that have been going on. Right now we've had budget cuts year after year after year after year, resulting in multiple layoffs of good teachers. And that's unfortunate, but that's a systematic problem. It's not a specific teacher problem. It's not a dismissal law problem. It's not a layoff problem. It's a budgetary constraint problem, as well as getting rid of all the programs. So I would say that there are many issues in education, but I would say that finding the solution by going into a courtroom and throwing out laws that do work in well-run school districts, again, isn't the solution.
Should teachers be held at all accountable for what's happening in public education?
I think that teachers absolutely should be held accountable for what they do each day, and we are. And we are given evaluations. And what we really need to do is make sure that we're supporting those teachers again. So we're supporting them with staff developments and supporting them with developments that allow them to become better teachers, especially with Common Core coming down.
On that point, though, if you take your car into a mechanic mechanic and he screws it up and doesn't fix your car, you don't say, well, gee, I'm going to pay to give this guy more training to fix my car. You take your car somewhere else where they'll fix it. And in education, when you start talking about helping the teachers, shouldn't the teachers be good teachers and be able to teach the kids? And is it really a matter of bringing teachers up to speed if they're not performing?
And I agree with you on the fact that there are teachers out there that are not performing well and that are ineffective. And there is a system to deal with that. And part of that system is assistance. And if a teacher doesn't make progress in an assistance plan, they're let go. And when we talk about permanent status, there's no such thing as a permanent job. My job is always on the line. I can do a lot of things to make sure that I don't keep my job. I can do a lot more to make sure I do. But the permanent status of a teacher it doesn't mean you can't be fired. You can. People are let go all the time. And when we look at the number of teachers that are let go or fired, yes, it's a smaller amount, but that doesn't take into account the teachers that are non-reelect and choose to resign. In fact, the district and the teachers union work together all the time to counsel teachers out of the profession that shouldn't be there. Reagan,
what do you think is the biggest point that has been made in this trial, and how do you think it's going to turn out?
Well, I can tell you how I hope it will turn out. But what I think that we need to do is really refocus on what the true issue is. And if we're looking at inequity in our schools, and inequitable placement of teachers, having highly qualified teachers at schools where we have impoverished students or students of high need, we need to look at what the district is doing, because no law, including the laws that are current, place teachers at their site. That's an administrative duty. The teachers are placed by administrators, so that should be an administrative assessment. And if we're having administrators that aren't able to place the teachers correctly, then that's something that we need to deal with on a different level. As far as layoffs go, and as far as dismissal laws, like I said, right now the only thing we have, we're kind of commingling the dismissal laws with the layoffs is what's happening. They were never meant to be that way. Layoffs were intended to make sure that a district could quickly and efficiently downsize if there's a big budget cut, which is what's been happening.
Gloria, what do you think has been the biggest point made in this trial, and how do you think it's going to turn out?
This has been a powerful spotlight brought by 9 brave children who have stood up to say the Constitution matters, and that the game that we've been playing in public education is a game that benefits a very wealthy, powerful union in California, to the detriment not only of these 9 kids, but the future of how we train all children in California and educate children. I think even more importantly, what this signifies is that this is the independent judicial branch. The California Teachers Association can, with its money, go and lobby legislators in Sacramento who depend on campaign dollars. They can't do that in a court of law. And this really, I think, has enabled us in the Vergara trial to really put a spotlight on all of these practices, and many of them are insidious and need to be overturned without interference from the campaign dollars. At the end of the day, this will be a very powerful ruling. I am hoping that it goes in favor of the Constitution, in favor of the plaintiffs, because the system needs to be changed.
It's not working. It's a high hurdle, though, isn't it? I mean, there are contracts, there are agreements with teachers. You're arguing civil rights violations.
Civil rights violations pointed to very specific statutes, which the data does demonstrate and the testimony demonstrates. Even some of the defendant testimony themselves is being turned on its head. Their own witnesses are essentially admitting in court these laws hurt. They're discriminatory, especially to poor and minority kids. That's why it's a civil rights case.
Great. Well, thank you so much. You're both very passionate, and thanks for coming on and sharing your views.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can watch this show and past shows at rickreef.com. Segments of the show can also be viewed at pbssocal.org. My guests have been Gloria Romero and Reagan Duncan. And thanks to Sandra Hutchens and Suzanne Verge. And thank you for watching. We'll see you again on SoCal Insider.
Mike Awards by the Radio and Television News Association of Southern California. This year's honors mark the third year in a row that SoCal Insider has won a Golden Mike for the Best News and Public Affairs program. Congratulations, Rick Reef and David Nazar. SoCal Insider with Rick Reef is brought to you by the following. 5 Point Communities is a proud sponsor of PBS SoCal. 5 Point Communities is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. More information available at www.fivepointcommunities.com. Snell & Wilmer is a full-service business law firm with more than 400 attorneys in Orange County, Los Angeles, and throughout the West. On the web at swlaw.com. Snell & Wilmer. Straight talk, sound counsel. Practical solutions.
Relief Pod's latest generation of safety kits now go everywhere you go. Relief Pod's organized, color-coded, and compact safety kits keep first aid and emergency items accessible for a safe lifestyle every day. Relief Pod. Live ready.
A healthy future for you, your family, and your business is why Memorial Care Health System transformed healthcare. Our hospitals, physicians, and outpatient centers keep patients healthy and care for them when they're not. Memorial Care, one healthcare system leading the way.
Almost everyone in America knows someone who's suffering from Alzheimer's. At UC Irvine, we're discovering new treatments for this devastating disease.